Hello again. This video, we are going to summarize kind of what we're doing for the second part of Module 2, which explores new chords and scales and the method of trying to compose simple textures and simple examples with these items that we've built. So in the previous part of this module, you wrote some polychords in a polychordal haiku, and you also created some of your own unique scales and their complements. That was covered in the previous video. In this segment, we are going to expand on those components and work towards our project for this module, which is a sort of a full-featured sort of piece that utilizes these elements. But first, we need to do a little bit more developing of these elements. So first, I'd like to talk about how to compose. One of our goals, short-term goals here with this second part of the module, is to compose a short, simple piece that, with these limitations, utilizing two of your synthetic scales. So Bartók, Bela Bartók, for those of us who are familiar with his music, was really good at presenting new scales in a way that is simple. And I really like this as a model because his book, series of books called Microcosmos, are intended for new pianists, and yet they utilize new scales from his native Hungary and other Eastern European resources. And what I love about that is it serves two purposes. It not only teaches you kind of how to play piano, but also in a way that explores new scales, not just major and minor, but new scales. Dorian, this one is in Dorian mode, and note the simplicity of this example. All the notes are, not virtuosic, or, the texture is very simple, and the playing of it, rests on two hands that don't really move positions. Very much, and I'm sorry, I'm a decent pianist, but not a very good one. And so on. So this is a very simple texture that explores some scales that are new to us. Other examples are from Bartók that. Here's an example of a score. This is for two violins, but it's cut from the same cloth, really. Two violins, but these two violins are playing. One's in, this sort of larger key signature with all this stuff. This one is in an open key signature, but they all have very simple textures, and it's two scales against one. Or I'm sorry, one scale against the other, and they change according to the change in scale. So I love this score as a good example of teaching kind of how to explore scale combinations. The recording to this is here, and please listen to it and listen to the combinations that are at work. In this piece, and you'll kind of get the gist of what we're trying for here, which is a simple piece, very short, only 16 measures, that utilizes a simple piano texture, as if this was written for a beginner. These Stravinsky examples are also good as examples too, that utilize some chords and things. This one's actually a good video. So note that this is for the 5 fingers, which is simply just simple texture. And we're going to use our two scales that we composed for the last module. So if we remember, we created a series of scales. We made our own scales, and then we found their complements. So we have 4 scales with which we can work. And I'd like us to, for this synthetic scale study, just compose a 16 measures sketch for piano that adheres to the following limitations. You're going to pick 2 of your scales that you made last week and assign them to either left or right hand. Each hand plays only 5 notes from one of your scales at a time. Okay? And you must be able to, it must be sort of approachable by a piano student, not virtuosic. We're not looking for the next, Beethoven piano sonata. We're talking about something real simple. If you cannot play piano, you're not alone. And so don't worry. Basically, you're just, assigning notes to rhythmic values. And if you can't play it back for yourself, that's okay. You can utilize MuseScore or other resources to do this. And simple rhythms, but I'd like you to explore something other than 4/4, okay? And you're creating just a simple texture. You're gonna either, write it out on paper, enter it into notation software, but basically, ultimately, what I'm looking for is an audio file, an MP3 of its sound output. So in like a MuseScore, for instance, you can export MP3 quite easily and create a PDF. And that's what I would need as a PDF and an audio file of your work. And again, these usually turn out really cool. I have an example of this here. This one's a little fancy, but you get the idea. This is a student really got into this one, and the performance and sound of it is really cool. But even though it's kind of fancy, it uses two scales that are different from each other. You can avoid a key signature, just use accidentals. I recommend that. This is just, simple, sort of sounds down here, dyads and so on. And you're just kind of exploring the scales for what they do and just to create sort of an alternating texture or something really simple. I hope that's clear and you enjoy putting this together. The second part of our sort of goals here, this in the second module, is to use this first that piano study and identify some motives from your composition, your study there. And it's this project is just a sort of a means to an end. We're going to identify some motives here and put them through the paces of developing a motive. There are some resources here that help to show kind of how to do this. Analyzing a motive is a way to look at how you take your original motive and examine its contents. You can rotate the motive in a way to sort of change the orientation of these notes. You can see what intervallic content it has. And so I'm asking you to take basically a fundamental motive of your scale study and work on filling a page roughly, or a half page, with some motivic transformation of this idea, right? Exploring inversions of the intervals that it has, changing it into a little phrase, turning it into a chord, finding subsets of that chord, creating quintal or quartal chords that are expanded in some way, and just taking lots of liberties with what you have and exploring what you can make out of it, really. And, this is a guide, and you can expand upon that if you'd like to. This is a page from a book by William Russo, who wrote a book on composition for beginners, and it also sort of showcases some options for transforming your motive, writing it in retrograde form, inverting the idea, creating a palindrome with the retrograde of itself. And this is a citation of where this was kind of adopted from, addition and subtraction, and other things to just kind of explore what you have and find more content with it. And so for that part of the assignment, you're uploading, if you notated in a, this one here. Upload 2 sketch pages, 1 page for each motive, to the Dropbox as scanned PDFs. So if you use a notation program, fine. This is easier to do, I think, on pencil paper, because then you can erase, you can scratch out, you can kind of make a mess on a piece of scratch paper, and that's absolutely fine with me. I think that's a great way to work, honestly. And so these are some some possibilities you can explore. Please be sure to label and tell me what you're doing with each sketch and kind of how that's going to work for you. And if you have any questions about this, please do be in touch. You can use these examples given up here as a guide. All right, so finally our project. Now, the ultimate goal is to create like a 3-minute piece. And again, this isn't supposed to be really fancy, but it can build off of what you've created. The polychord, everything that we've created so far for this module is in play. You can combine your piano study with your polychordal haiku in some way. You can utilize any of the scales that we've sort of explored so far that you've created. So you got to give your piece a title, which is part of the composing process. Got to give it a title. It makes it have a little extra meaning. Your piece must incorporate these elements. Some sort of formal organization. So I often use this as an example. Like you can start, it's like an ABA form. Let's say you begin with your scale study 16 measure bit. You incorporate your polychordal haiku in the middle, maybe with a little bit more composed out, and then you finish with the restatement of your 16 measure piece. You're basically looking at using these sort of things that we've looked at already, polychords, motivic development, bitonal combinations of motive and melody, incorporating multiple time signatures, all these little things that I'm throwing at you. Just try to accept them and pull them into the piece a little bit. So please put this together in a notation program. It's probably a little bit easier to export an audio file of that, and a PDF of your score. And then finally, a reflection paper that discusses what you were trying to do with the piece, and what it might be about, how it's organized, and give your best effort to describe on one side of a piece of paper your experience with the piece. It's like expanded program notes, kind of like, what are you trying to say as the composer of this piece? Don't forget to put your name on the score as the composer. That's also an extremely important part of this, and I take it for granted, but I need to mention that's part of this project. So these are some things to keep in mind, that you're striving for independence between the two hands, to create almost like two independent performers, if you would. Definitely explore the entire piano. You can use the inside of the piano. You can use, extreme ranges of the piano, the way far deep end, the very high brittle, high part of the piano. Use the form to generate the piece. Keep it simple, and derive your material from your previous projects for this module. Definitely, pay it forward in that regard. So you can definitely steal from your own sketches. That's what they're for. And so in the Dropbox for this project, we're looking for a PDF of the score, a recording of the score somehow. Either you're exporting an MP3, or you can even try to find somebody to perform it if you can't yourself, and also the one-page reflection. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. Thank you.